the blessing, then just below it's f of x and g of x. And then sketch below are graphs of f of x, which is the cos graph. And then we have g of x, which is a sine graph, where x is an element between minus 60 up until 120. And then what you want to do is to come and check what are the critical values here. There are these points which we call them, which are important. For example, here, if you look at f of x is passing through this point. We don't know what is this one. We're not going to force it, but this one we know. You see this one again?
Yes.
What is this point here? What can you tell me? What is x?
6.
It's 6. And then what is y? It's 0. And then this one, we can also know this one. What is this one? It's 120. It goes with what? Goes with -1. Yeah, there are points that we can see. This one we are not sure. Like we can't say what is this again. We can clearly see what this one is 1, but is it in the middle? We're not sure. We're not going to assume. Let's go to this one. We'll use a red color for g of x. This point we know. What is this one? It's 30. It goes with what? With 2. And then let's go here. We still have 60 and 0. And then we have this one here. What is this one? It's 90. It goes with what? 90 goes with -2. Okay, they say if we look at this thing here, write down the coordinates of the maximum turning point of G. What is the maximum turning point? Maximum, the biggest one. It's 30:2. No? Yeah, you come and tell them which, okay, the coordinates of the turning point is going to say which we have 30, which goes with what? With 2. So it's not as if we know exactly what kind of questions they're going to ask us. We just have to interpret the graphs. And then number 2, they say, determine the values of x for which f of x is increasing. So I'm going to look at f of x. Where is f of x going to be increasing? You go to check f of x. Increasing, we're talking about the y value, which is getting bigger and up until you get to the turning point. So you're going to start from here up until you go to A, because A is the turning point. What do you say about this graph? Is it getting smaller or bigger here? It's getting bigger. And then as soon as I get from A here, this graph is getting smaller up until it gets here. The other way to see this thing here is like, if I talk about G, look at G. G, it says from here up until I get to the turning point, I can tell them what this graph here is doing something. What is it doing? Getting bigger or small? Oh. Yeah, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller up until you get here again. And then it's getting bigger, it's getting bigger up until you get to the turning point again. And then it's getting smaller, up until it gets here. And then it increase. So what are the x values that are making that to be possible? Come and highlight them. What are these x values that are making this to be possible? -60 up until we get to 0. So I'm going to tell them which here x is an element from -60 up until we get to what? To 0. And then we don't use square bracket, but we use the curve bracket. Because at the turning point, the graph, it's not increasing, it's not decreasing. So it can't be equals to. So it cannot be equals to. Now, this is the one which I'm interested in. Determine the values of Q and B. Come and check here. What is B? We want to determine what is going to be Q. No? And then we also want to determine what is going to be actually to be B. Now, when you get Q from f of x. Okay? So you're going to come and say, okay, which graph is f of x? It's this one. Okay? What are the coordinates that you have for f of x? Which coordinates do you have for f of x? You have 60:0. Yeah, we're going to use that. So we're going to tell them which we have y, which is going to be equal to the cos of x plus q. Okay? And then there's a point that we can use. Which point am I going to use? It's 60 is to what? Is to 0. So I'm going to put 0 here. This is going to be equal to the cos of, what is my x?
120.
It's 60. Close bracket, okay? Plus q. And if I say this, look at this. If I say cos of 60 in my calculator, what is cos of 60? It's 1 all over 2 plus q. Okay? Take this one to this other side. It says -1 all over 2 is going to be what? To be q. So what is my q then? I will come and tell them. Our q is going to be -1 all over 2. And then another hint, if you want this thing to work, just use, like I've seen it works best if you are using values after the y-axis. Don't use any values before the y-axis. They are there, but I don't use them. They just complicate your life. So just use any values after the y-axis, meaning we'll use the positive values. Don't concentrate on the negative values. So we got this one, q. Let's get p. How to get p? Where does the graph pass? It passes at 30 and 2 again. So we'll tell them which we have y, which is going to be 2. sine bx, okay? Now, according to this point here, what can we say? Y is 2. It's going to be equal to 2 the sine b multiplied by 8, like this. Okay, what are you trying to get? You're trying to get what? B. You want to get B. Okay, let's move on with this thing here. I can divide both sides by 2. Okay? Divide by 2, divide by 2. It says which 1 is going to be sine B. We can call it 30B. Let's do that. Let's call it 30B, like this. I want to make B the subject. How would I make B the subject? I can put sine arc. Okay? If I put sine of 1 is going to be equal to 30B. Now say sine of 1, sine arc of 1, what do you get? It says which 90 is going to be equal to 30B. What are you looking for? B. Divide by 30, divide by 30, what is going to be a B? Our B is going to be what? To be 3, and then we get our 2 marks there. Yeah, it's 1 mark. Yeah, like they expect we should have interpreted this graph and then we know which shifted left-hand side, right-hand side, which I find a little bit difficult. I mean, I prefer to use the coordinate. So you can do it by just looking at this graph and say, okay, the original graph was supposed to be like this. And then was it shifted? What is it? I can't do that. Like, I'm going to be honest. So B is going to be equal to 3. 1 mark, 1 mark. Use the graph to determine the values of X for which this is going to be greater than 0. So what do you have? You have 2 cos X multiplied by the sine 3X minus sine 3X. And then they say which this is going to be greater than 0. So now what is this here? You will realize something here. Here, you already know what is cos of X. Okay? Cos of X, f of X is given as the cos of X minus 1 all over 2, like this. Okay? What else do you have? You have g of X. What is g of X? It's 2 sine X. Okay. Let's come and check here. Usually the things that they give you here are those graphs. So if you check here, what is it that you have? This one, it's like here you have something like this. You have 2 cos X multiplied by, what is this? This is going to be our g of X. Or it's f of X, it's g of X. Minus g of X. And then this should give you something which is going to be greater than 0. Now, how would this become, if we wanted this to be like this, how would it be? Look at this here. I can show you this thing here. If I take this 2 and then put it here, I have g of X. What's happening, Marie? Let's call it a D.